Someone asked, what's the best way for them to dissolve the patterns of the person? What's the best way to dissolve this identification with being the person? The best way to dissolve these patterns, this activity of identification, is really being yourself. It's really resting as awareness. Just pure subjectivity. Some would call it nirvikalpa samadhi, which is awareness without objects or activity. Typically, closing your eyes, relaxing, resting as you are. And what happens is the attention relaxes, lets go of constantly going outward towards objects. This activity of attention going outward towards objects comes to a rest. And the attention is resting in you, the subject. You, awareness. The attention is resting in awareness. It's ceasing to move towards objects, such as thoughts and feelings and sense perceptions. So there's no activity. There's no objects. Awareness of awareness. That's what remains. Self-awareness, the subject knowing the subject. So it's a non-dual experience, not two. There's no subject knowing an object. It's simply the subject knowing itself. This would be considered nirvikalpa samadhi. Awareness without objects or activity. And you could say you get familiar with yourself because all the objects are gone. There's no activity, meaning there's no identifying with something that you're not. It's as if you are becoming more and more familiar with yourself. You've let go of the limited identification of being just the body-mind. You've let go of thinking. You've let go of the body. You've let go of everything, and you're simply resting as yourself. And it's as if you become more and more familiar with yourself. You are so familiar with the limited identification, so familiar with being a person, that you now have let go of the person, and now it's as if you are being more and more familiar with you, presence. And it's as if you are becoming more and more familiar with yourself, and you don't have the objects and the activity to distract you. It's as if they're not there. Distracting you from yourself. So it's just you. No distractions. And you become more and more familiar with yourself. That then when the objects and the activity reappear, you open your eyes. It's as if you don't forget what you are so quickly. It's as if you now are still aware of awareness with the objects and activity. And what you notice is this identification process, the attention going outward towards objects, is not happening as much. The attention is able to continue resting in the subject, awareness, you, in the midst of experiencing the objects and activity. You're able to stay as awareness, abide as awareness, be yourself. That you've let go, you've discontinued, you've stopped pretending to be something that you're not. You're taking a rest from this game of make-believe, this pretending to be something that you're not. Pretending to be something that you're not takes effort. It's unnatural to be what you're not. So there's this feeling of you're able to rest, you're able to relax, you are effortlessly relaxing, and it feels so natural because you're resting as your true nature. You're simply being as you are. You're not interested in becoming. That's what you are taking a break from. You've been becoming your entire life. Becoming this, becoming that. It's all identities. You've been creating this, creating that. Identities are something that you create. But now you're becoming familiar with that which is prior to any identity, that which does not need an identity. You don't go creating another identity called awareness or beingness or presence or anything like that. These are just words that are pointing to that which doesn't need an identity. An identity really means to make the same, meaning that there's two. There's one that's becoming the same as another. What you are doesn't need an identity. You're simply remaining without identity. You've let go of identity. You've ceased to create any identity. You're simply resting. That activity of identifying. Identifying is an activity. That's becoming less and less. That activity is reduced. And you start finding that the more you're simply resting as you are, that identity process, the process of identifying, starts decreasing significantly. Because you're simply remaining as you are. You have this clarity. You're able to see even when these old patterns, these old tendencies of identifying, they start up. You see it. And you notice the difference of the attention going outward, identifying with certain things. You are able to start seeing the entire process. You're seeing the pattern. You're seeing how it's very cyclical. Certain times this identity is kickstarted around certain people or certain circumstances, specific environments. The identity is there more in certain times than they are at others. So you start seeing it as this process. And by simply remaining as you are with the objects and activity, then it's as if you're simply devoted to yourself. You're simply resting as you are. You love being yourself more than being what you're not. You love just simply this feeling of being natural. This feeling of being natural is your true nature. What could be more natural than your true nature? What could be more natural than being yourself? Being yourself is effortless. So with what we can call nirvikalpa samadhi, or simply being aware of being aware without objects and activity, it's as if you become familiar with yourself. You get to know yourself without any distractions of objects and activity. Eyes closed, meditation, simply resting as yourself with your eyes closed, not identified with thoughts and feelings and sense perceptions. You've let go of all that. Your attention is relaxed and it has returned to the subject, which is you. No objects to distract, no objects to identify with. It's just you, pure subjectivity. And then the eyes open, and it's as if this practice then carries on throughout the day. And is almost tested. These objects, this activity, these old patterns and tendencies are kind of like old friends that are always inviting you into the game of dress up, make believe, pretending. And at first you accept the invitation all the time. Sure, let's do that again. Until you start really, like I said, being devoted to yourself, really loving yourself, just being yourself. You love to be yourself. You love feeling natural. You love this effortless awareness that you are. You start tasting your true nature. It's this tasting of your true nature that makes it so easy to be yourself. That in a way, it's its own reward. You be yourself. And what's that experience of being yourself like? Well, it's what we call happiness and love and peace and freedom, beauty, intelligence, wonder, rest, all these different names. It's like the perfume of our true nature. These qualities that are non-objective, they're not coming from any objects or activities or any experiences that are dependent on what we experience as the outer world. So naturally, it's like its own reward or incentive to continue to come back. The attention comes back and rests, and there's this reward. Thanks for being yourself. And just like there's a reward for being yourself, there's also what we can call a consequence for being identified with what you're not. And it shows up in the form of stress, dissatisfaction, unhappiness, worry, anxiety, fear, depression, things of that nature. We can just cover it as suffering. That when I'm identified with something that is limited, this idea of who I think I am, this self-image of who I think I am, then it's kind of like I pay the price. So this suffering actually apparently, it feels like this as you're going through it, it seems to make you more intelligent. It seems to work in the way that pain works for the body. That when you touch a hot stove, the pain tells you to remove the hand. And like this, when you go back to the tendency of identifying with a limited form or the person or whatever you want to call it, these identities, then you experience the suffering. You experience any of those things that I was saying and more. But you experience the suffering. So in a way, it's making you more intelligent. It's almost like how the pain, you reach for the stove, put your hand on the stove, a hot burner, and immediately take it away. The pain acts as a signal. In the same way, the suffering acts as a signal. As soon as you go and touch that identity and you think that that's you, then you experience the suffering. So then it's, oh, let go of that. the attention, releases. It literally starts feeling like the hand. Another video, I've mentioned this. Good practice is, it's like, don't touch the mind. When you touch it, then it's like, you get burned, anything that you're trying to hold on to. And it's these identities that we're holding on to. Holding on to the self-image of the successful businesswoman or businessman. Holding on to this identity of being the loving mother, loving father, the funny guy at school, the hard worker. So many identities. And the more you go and reach out and touch it, it's like as if your sensitivity has increased and you're sensing it sooner, faster, and there's this letting go of it. You start to see it. Like I said, you're able to see when you've moved away from yourself. Anytime you're moving towards the object, it's not you that's moving, but it's the attention. It's as if you're watching that attention move away from yourself. It's not resting, it's now active. It wants to cling to objects. It's bouncing around from this and that. It used to just rest, but now it's going out. And you notice when it goes out and reaches, it's like it gets burned. Ouch. So it comes back. This starts happening where you're able to see it. And it's as if you apparently are getting more intelligent to learn your lesson, just like a kid would learn his lesson not to touch the hot stove. Huh? Burn me once, burn me twice, but not 3 times. I've learned my lesson. So in the same way, when you go and pick up those identities, when you try and reach out to that self-image, that reputation, that idea of who you think you are, then you just get quicker at putting it down, coming back to yourself. And it's one of these things that these patterns, this identification process, it's like this activity, like any activity, it needs energy. It needs energy. And it's you that's empowering those patterns and cycles. It's you that's energizing that activity. That you are the source. You are the source, and your attention, your interest with that identity, your interest with that idea of yourself, your interest in the character, in the story, in the conflict, in the memory, the past, in the future, the goals, the desires, the where you came from, where you're going, your whole story, your interest in that. It's the attention that's attending that. And that's what's energizing it. So naturally, it's like I said, you become more devoted to yourself. You start becoming more interested in yourself as awareness, and you're less interested in all of that story and the person and the identification and your past and your future. It's like you are effortlessly ignoring it. It's as if you become very dispassionate about it. You're not trying to reject it. You're not pushing it away. But you're also not clinging to it. You're just indifferent to it. You're not pulled by it. It's no longer enticing. It's like it used to entice you or seduce you or really invite you back in. But it's like you're learning your lesson. Every time you get invited back in, then you experience the suffering. So it's more now that You experience those invitations. Hey, do you want to come back into Fantasyland where you pretend to be this and that and actually believe that that's you? It's more of this declining. You just don't show up. You don't feel obligated like you have to. Instead, you're simply resting as you are. And you're rewarded for resting as you are. So the attention is no longer going out to those objects. That activity, that attention is the activity of identifying with the objects. When that is no longer happening because you're no longer energizing it, you're no longer interested, you're no longer attending that, you're no longer empowering that activity, then you are simply remaining as you are. It feels a lot like you are taking back your power, that you're pulling your power back, and it's through relaxation that you're able to just relax your energy. You start realizing how much energy it takes to actually maintain a reputation, a self-image, maintain this idea of who you are. How much energy does it take to actually carry around the past everywhere you go? How much energy does it take to run to your goals in the future? So you start seeing that so much energy is put into this, that actually by relaxing, you are taking back your power. The power is coming back to you. It feels like this. And you're able to just rest as yourself. And it's this that you start experiencing as this power. You're full of it. You're full of this power. You are rejuvenated. You're revitalized. You start seeing how you're so tired that this whole personality, person, character, story, it took so much energy to hold it all together, to believe it to be real, to keep it all going. You start seeing that. So then naturally you just feel like you're relaxed, that you're not putting that same power, that same energy into those things. So like that, because you're not energizing that activity anymore, it's no longer creating more impressions. It's no longer creating more of that kind of that groove, that identity groove, or that pattern, or that cycle. Right? It's like an activity. It's like riding your bike. You have to continue pedaling. You are applying the power to the pedals to keep it going. But as soon as you stop applying power to the pedals, sure, there's still some momentum, but it slows down. That momentum slows down. And as long as you continue to not apply power to the pedals, then that wheel starts slowing down and down, slowing down more and more. Every time you apply power, then it starts it up. So it's really about not energizing that activity, and you're just simply resting as you are. You are the source. That activity is energized by you. So, long explanation of the best way to dissolve those patterns. But it's the most effective way that I know. Hopefully this helps. I'll see you in the next one.